Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to look at one of the most famous stories in the whole world, Cinderella. Now, you might think this is just a simple children's fairy tale, but it's actually so much more than that. It's a really deep story about human pain, about holding on to hope, and about the incredible power of a kind heart. So let's explore this beautiful story together and discover the deep lessons it holds for our everyday lives. Here's a quick look at our journey today. We'll start with a life of hard work, move on to the magical night, and then talk about the glass slipper. After that, we'll dive into who are the characters and wrap up with the deeper meaning. All right, let's jump right into part one, a life of hard work. The Girl in the Ashes. Cinderella's story actually begins with a lot of sadness. She lived with a stepmother and two stepsisters who were incredibly mean to her. Her stepmother was cruel, which means she really didn't care about Cinderella's feelings at all. Instead of treating her like a daughter or a sister, they made her act like a servant in her very own home. She had to wash their dirty clothes and scrub the hard floors from early morning until late at night. She was completely alone, with nobody to love her. Because she had no real bed, she slept near the cold fireplace to stay warm. So her old clothes were always covered in gray dust from the fire. We call that dust ashes or cinders. And that's exactly why they called her Cinderella. But you know, here is the real beauty of her character. The fire outside was cold, but the fire inside her heart stayed warm. Even in this dark, lonely life, she literally never complained. She just chose to stay kind and hopeful. That brings us to part two, the magical night. A dream comes true. One day, the king invited all the young women in the land to a grand dance, a big ball, because he wanted to find a wife for the prince. Well, the stepsisters were so excited. They went out and bought beautiful, colorful dresses. Cinderella really wanted to go too, but her cruel stepmother just said no and actually gave her even more chores to do. So the stepmother and sisters left for the bright, happy palace, leaving poor Cinderella behind in the dark, cold garden, crying all by herself. But then, magic happens. Her fairy godmother appeared out of nowhere. She told Cinderella not to cry. With just one wave of her magic wand, she changed a simple orange pumpkin into a shining golden carriage. Then, she turned small mice into strong white horses, and a rat became the driver. And the best part? Cinderella's dirty, dusty rags completely transformed into a sparkling blue dress, along with a pair of perfect, delicate glass slippers. Cinderella was finally ready, but the godmother gave her a very strict warning. This magic had a time limit. At the ball, Cinderella was incredibly happy. The prince thought she was amazing and only wanted to dance with her. For the first time in forever, she felt loved and beautiful, and she completely forgot about the time. But the rule was absolute. Every bit of that magic would disappear exactly at midnight. Now for part three, the glass slipper, the search for love. Suddenly, the big clock in the palace began to strike. 1, 2, all the way to 12. Midnight! Cinderella suddenly remembered the warning and felt pure panic. She ran out of that beautiful palace as fast as her legs could carry her. And in her big hurry, she accidentally dropped one of those precious glass slippers on the stairs, leaving it far behind. The prince found that lost slipper and promised to marry the girl whose foot fit it perfectly. When he eventually came to Cinderella's house, the mean stepsisters tried so hard to push their big feet into the small shoe. They really just wanted the prince's money and power, but of course, it didn't fit. Then, Cinderella stepped forward. The stepmother just laughed at her dirty clothes, but guess what? The shoe fit perfectly. The prince saw her true self, not just a servant covered in ashes. So, they get married and live happily ever after. We all know that happy ending, right? But let's stop and think for a second. Why do we still read this story today? What deep lessons about human life does Cinderella actually teach us? Let's move past all the fun magic and look at the real meaning here. Part 4. Who are the characters? A study in contrast. Let's think about the huge difference between these women. Cinderella wears dirty clothes, but inside, she is pure, kind, and hardworking. She has beautiful inner character. On the other hand, the stepsisters wear expensive, colorful dresses, but inside, they are jealous, selfish, and just really ugly on the inside. The author is teaching us a very powerful truth here. Rich clothes do not make a good person. Your heart is what makes you truly beautiful. Every character in this story plays a special role in testing Cinderella's heart. The cruel stepmother brings pain and darkness to her life. The fairy godmother brings help, showing us that the universe eventually rewards goodness. And the prince? He represents true love, because he recognizes Cinderella's worth even without all the fancy magic. Finally, part 5, the deeper meaning, beyond the fairy tale. The absolute greatest lesson of this story is the triumph of good over evil. Now, what does triumph mean? Triumph is a great victory or a huge success. The stepmother and sisters had all the power, money, and comfort in the world, while Cinderella had absolutely nothing. But the story shows us that cruelty never wins in the end. A good heart is always stronger than hate. Goodness will always triumph. You see, the true magic in Cinderella isn't the magic wand. It's her humanity. First, she shows hope. She stayed positive even when she was sitting in the dark ashes. Second, and most importantly, she shows radical kindness. At the end of the story, Cinderella becomes a princess. She has all the power to punish her cruel stepfamily. But what does she do? She chooses to forgive them instead. Forgiving people who hurt you takes incredible strength. That is her true magic. True beauty comes from kindness, and good things happen to good people. The stepsisters tried to buy love and beauty with fancy dresses, but Cinderella proved that true beauty lives quietly inside your soul. It's measured by how you treat other people, especially when your own life is hard. You might not have a fairy godmother, and you probably aren't going to a royal palace anytime soon, but you have real power in your own life. So how can you use the magic of kindness today? When you face difficult people or just really hard days, will you choose to be like the stepmother, or will you choose the quiet, strong heart of Cinderella? I want you to think about that as you go about your day. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.